Welcome, everyone. Like Nkechi said, happy Reparations Awareness Day. This is the official Reparations Awareness Day. And today, with the Reparation Information Thought Series, we're presenting Staying Strong in the Fight for Reparations During Political Turmoil. So, the Reparation Information Thought Series is a strategic periodic webinar featuring reparations experts, racial justice thought leaders, and you engaged in critical discussion, reflection, and analysis on issues pertinent to the movement for reparatory justice in the U.S. and abroad. I'm Jessica Ann Mitchell Aiwuyor. I am Executive Director of the National Black Cultural Information Trust, and this program is co-hosted with the Reparation Education Project with Executive Director Nkechi Taifa. And
So
feel free.
thank you so very much, Jam. And I'm just really thrilled to be able to introduce our guest panelists today who are going to be uh, talking about this issue about what's going on right here, right now, and how we as reparationists can stay strong during this time of political turmoil. We have Nicole Carty. She is a movement strategist. She is a digital organizer. She is a campaigner. She is a trainer. She has nearly 2 decades of experience and has played key roles in some of the most vital movements of the 21st century, including Occupy Wall Street, including the movement for Black Lives. She's trained hundreds of organizers in strategic campaigning and civil resistance and serves on the board of Momentum. And her analysis has been featured all over the place. She currently serves as executive director of Get Free. Hey, Get Free, a youth-led movement to reckon with and repair the harm of white supremacy in order to realize a multiracial democracy for all. And we also have my dear sister, Robin Proudie. You know, we're talking about someone who is a decorated U.S. Navy veteran, retired civil servant with over 24 years of federal, service. But after retiring, she embarked on her most important mission, honoring the legacy of her Jesuit enslaved ancestors who were forced to build St. Louis University and other Catholic schools and churches in the Missouri region between 1823 and 1865. Robin Proudie is the founder and executive director of the Descendants of the St. Louis University Enslaved, and her work is centered on remembrance, on narrative change through education, and achieving reparations for historic and lingering harms. And so I just want to say, welcome, Nicole, and welcome, Robin Proudie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nkechi. So nice to be here with you all.
Yes.
So, Jam and I chose this topic because there's a lot of uneasiness, shall we say, out there in the movement, and we chose these two presenters as panelists specifically because their work is ongoing. They have not slowed down in the midst of the political turmoil that we see ourselves. And you know, I've heard just a lot over the past several weeks, and I've heard despair, and I've heard a loss of hope, and I've heard, oh, we shouldn't focus on this, we should focus on that. And I wrote a short piece in Medium called, very similar to the title of this thought series, Staying Strong in the Fight for Reparations in a Time of Political Turmoil, my message to the reparations movement. And I just want to share a few passages for this before I turn it over to Jam to go on and start the discussion with our panelists. So I started off by saying that our fellow organizers and brothers and sisters in the struggle, that these are undeniably challenging at times. We know that the political climate that we face today is fraught with threats to the very principles of justice and equity that we hold dear, whether it's the dismantling of diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, whether it's the relentless attacks on immigrants seeking refuge. What we're witnessing is an administration that is, in fact, trampling on civil and human rights with impunity. But I said in my piece, I said, we have been here before, and we have prevailed before. Okay, our ancestors faced far worse. They were enslaved. They were dehumanized. They were stripped of their identities. Yet, even in the bleakest of times, what did they do? They dreamed of freedom. They passed down to us not just their trauma, but also what? Their unwavering hope and the determination to keep moving forward, to keep that momentum going, no matter the obstacles. This legacy is our birthright, and it is why. It is why we cannot, we will not, we must not despair, no matter who sits in the White House. I said that now is the time to double down, and the calls for reparations are even louder. And we're going to hear from that from our panelists today. And I was saying, despair is what the opposition wants. It is hope, however. Hope is what is revolutionary. Optimism in the face of adversity is an act of defiance. When we gather, when we organize, when we strategize, when we dream, what we're doing, we're building the world our ancestors envisioned and the world, the future that our children deserve. So I just concluded by saying we must stay strong. We must lean on each other. We must draw strength from the generations that came before us. We must remember that no matter how bleak the headlines may appear, that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice only when we, the people, only when we pull it with all of our might. And that's what we're seeking to do with this thought series. We're seeking to pull that arc of the moral universe towards what? Towards justice. So, Jam, I'm going to turn it over to you to go on and start the discussion with our panelists.
Sure. So, like Nkechi said, it's been a lot of conversation around reparations, especially during this time period with the president that we have, with the Congress that we have, with the political state that we have. What do you think about the state of the reparations movement currently, locally, nationally, or in your personal work? Robin or Nicole or Nkechi, whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Well, I think that a few things, Bella. Thank you for the question. I think that over the past few years, we've seen an increasing amount of strength and growth for the movement for reparations. We've seen local reparations commissions getting passed, state level reparations commissions getting passed. And a lot of that came out of a deepened national understanding around the ongoing and lingering impacts of slavery and racial inequality and discrimination. And this, of course, is a sort of consciousness that's been building forever, but especially since 2014 with the sort of widespread breakout of movement for Black lives. And so in many ways, this current political moment that we're in is a backlash to the growing strength and understanding and clarity around the reality of systemic racism, the need for reparations that are increasingly broadly felt. We've been in a backlash period really since 2020 ended, since the streets kind of emptied from that moment. And the forces that want to make sure that reparations don't happen, that are trying to resurrect white supremacy, that are trying to erase history, they've gotten really organized. And in this past election, they have now seized control of the federal government. And so it may seem really, which is not great, but it isn't what it seems, because even though they're going to be lashing out, we've seen this against history, against DEI, which is one step towards reparations, right? Is like we've seen this administration really trying to undermine any policy that recognizes history, that tries to make equal what has been made unequal. What that creates is a potential for a really deep backlash in society, because society, America, actually might not think this is true, but values equality. It's an American value, right? And so as this administration oversteps, as we see the attacks on equality that are coming from this administration, the attacks against reparations, what that creates is actually a really strong potential for growth in the reparations movement as people recognize we haven't actually solved these problems. We should solve these problems. And it actually pushes to the forefront uh, priority of solving these problems for once and for all through repair. And so despite a kind of bleak federal outlook and administration, there's actually a lot of potential to grow the movement for reparations right now, and bring it, really connect reparations with equality and freedom and these ideas people value really deeply, and help reparations enter that conversation. Because reparations should be in that conversation. That's the means to an end to creating equality. And right now people will get a chance to, like, there's an opportunity for people to understand that and see it more clearly. So I'll stop there around what the reparations movement has been and what potential for it lies in this moment, and then over to you, Robin.
Right. You basically, I concur with everything that you've said. I definitely think it is an opportunity, first of all, just to bringing it to the forefront over the past few years, and the commissions that have cropped up in cities across the nation, and the potential for us to focus on, even though this climate with federal, what's going on federally, we can still come together and coalesce behind the local efforts like those of the SLU. We are moving forward. We are unapologetic in our stance. We have the receipts, and we think that this is a great opportunity for us to push it forward and to educate people, because we're forced to come together right now. We're forced to start focusing on our own collective needs and how do we get that pushed through for the future. So I concur with everything Nicole said. And Nkechi, after that, what you just said, it's like we got our marching orders. We're ready to go. I mean, you just laid it out and inspired us. So that's what I have to say to that.
So, Jam, let me chime in real quick on this as well. And I really appreciate the perspectives from our guests. And I'm just hearkening back because no one who's on the screen that we're seeing right now was around back then during this time. But back in the early 80s, when the Japanese American Redress Bill, which became known as the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, was being discussed in Congress, and then that inspiration drew John Conyers to fashion H.R. 40 along those same lines. It was a federal effort. There wasn't anything happening on the local level then. But with respect to us, not the Japanese American, but with respect to us, never in our mind did we think that we were going to pass that federal bill right then and there. But what the federal bill served to do was served as a impetus for activity on the state and local level. Most folk don't realize that everything that we're seeing on the state and local level now had its genesis from the original North Star, the original federal bill HR 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans. That federal bill was used in our mobilizing. This is long before the turn of the century, in like the late 1980s, to get local jurisdictions to say, okay, I support a study, because at that point it was just a study. Who could be against a study? But we had a federally chartered piece of legislation for people to be able to rally behind, which in and itself actually did nothing. Okay, I'm just saying, but it was something to draw on. So I don't want those, and I've seen media reports to feel that any advocacy on the federal level is dead. The federal level is our North Star. Right now, the activity, the crux of the struggle, though, it's on the state and local levels. But I just want to just make it clear that we would not have seen the momentum that we saw in California. We would not have seen the momentum that we see in Illinois had it not been for persons before the turn of the century, drawing upon that North Star, that federal bill, and saying, I'm going to establish a resolution in support of H.R. 40. It happened all up and through jurisdictions in California. It happened all throughout Illinois, particularly Evanston, Illinois, and dozens of other states, including Washington, D.C., and local communities across the country. So federal advocacy is not dead. Okay, we need to put our eggs in all of these baskets, federal, state, and local. But we need to realize that now the atmosphere is there for us to make some real change on the local, the city, state, and local levels right now. And that's what I think we see happening. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Jam, to come on with the next question.
I think you're going right into that question, which is, what do you think are some of the current positives for the reparations movement?
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what you said, Nkechi. This is a perfect opportunity for us to come together, come up with new strategies, and to get organized behind what's going on today. The other team is organized. See, they are organized, they come together and they work out the strategies. I think it's important for us to understand the language that is being spoken, how we can coalition build, how we can get together. The positives is under public awareness and educating. We have this opportunity because a lot of times people don't even understand what reparations is. We have opportunities to really start educating the public, to galvanize the public on what it is that we're doing. I think some of the positives is that although this is happening, we are a lot of elections are coming up. We can start to elect people, put people in place that can affect legislation locally. And so I think the positive of this situation is, one, forcing us to unify with our allies to come up with new ways and new strategies to move forward in this climate, and coalition building and funding organizations that you can help to elevate voices that keep this central. We have to keep this. They want us to die down and feel apathetic about what's going on, but we have to elevate those stories and keep our stories in the public. And that's what we're doing here in St. Louis.
Yeah, and I would also just say that right now there are Americans all across the country watching the biggest rollback of civil rights in the past 100 and some years, and they're not feeling great about it. And there's a lot of places that are controlled by people who want to defend civil rights, and not just defend, but advance civil rights. And so in places like California or New York, places with, Democratic governors and governments who want to take a stance against this large-scale attack on equality and civil rights, there's a really strong opportunity to advance reparations as part of what it means to, like, not just protect civil rights, but deepen civil rights. And so that is an opportunity that I think exists in this moment. There's a lot of administrations and government officials who want to really publicly push back against what they're seeing happen on the federal level. And a lot of the public who is not happy about what is happening on the federal level, that can be galvanized, and that energy can be harnessed into really bridging the gap between, equality and reparations, and making that a priority and a part of what it means to reject the attack on policies to correct historical inequality, and actually mainstream that this is the thing we need to do in order to create an equal future. So those are some opportunities that exist now, and we should definitely be thinking about how we can harness the outrage against civil rights that are happening right now and bring in the fight for reparations in part of that conversation, because reparations are really just the unfinished work of the civil rights movement to actually creating equality. And we have a giant opportunity to make that clear here.
So I would say when you ask what are some current positives for the reparations movement, I'm going to say the work that our two panelists here right now are doing, and also the work that you're doing, Jam, are positives. I mean, Robin Proudie represents the Descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved. I mean, caskets are opening up all over this country with respect to atrocities that people might not have even been totally aware of before that now are coming to light. And the work that she's doing with that, which I knew nothing about. I heard about the GU Georgetown 272, but I did not know that there was another connection with St. Louis University. And this more and more and more. The work that Nicole Carty is doing with Get Free, with organizing youth, that is a positive. That is our future. I mean, I'm just saying the young people that she's organizing, or organizations organizing across college campuses across the country are key to the future of everything that we are doing. And Jam, the work that you're doing in narrative change is just unprecedented. So if we could just take a moment before we even go on for Robin and Nicole to say just a little bit about the work that you're doing, the work that you're doing with Get Free, the work, Robin, that you're doing with DeSLU. I got it correct, DeSLU, DSLUE, Descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved, right.
Yes.
And you just give us a feel for that, because that's the continuing work that's happening on the ground. So Robin, you go for it.
Okay. To continue with the children, with the students, last night, I was with the students at St. Louis University. I have galvanized the students, and they are actually spearheading the program that I talked about, the first ever candlelight vigil program honoring those who helped to build St. Louis University. On the university, the students have also signed a resolution in solidarity with Descendants for St. Louis University to adhere to our 10-point remedies plan that we submitted to them. We actually do have progress. Actually, on March 26th of this year, St. Louis University is going to conduct a private apology to Descendants here, and then a public apology the same day with the media and press to apologize, and that's a form of reparations. That's satisfaction. And that is the first of our 10-point plan. And with that, we are demanding action items to be announced that we submitted to them at the public apology, which they have agreed. Thanks to the generous donation and grant from Decolonizing Wealth, we was able to be strategic in how we move in pushing and urging the university to start this process. First, it started with a teach-in last year and a briefing with our Ariva Martin on the campus. We converged on the campus. We went viral. Dr. Julianne Malveaux conducted a report on the labor that was extracted from our ancestors from 1823 to 1865. And that report, it came that it was from $360 million to $74 billion that St. Louis University and the Jesuit owed us. And that didn't even count the mental fit, the psychological and the health disparities. That was just the labor. And so from there, we utilize the grant to, right now we have a billboard campaign all over the city of St. Louis under Black History Month called Black History Lives. We have 6 static boards and 7 designs on 12 digital boards all around saying Black History Lives. Black history is American history. Who built SLU? And beginning to educating the public about this history, which actually has an impact. And so what I say to that is we have to continue to move forward and not let what is going on. One thing that I noticed about the work that I've been doing, because trust me, I've had people tell me that I wouldn't even get an apology where we're at right now. People this is a red state. They're not doing that, this and that and the other. But I have kept my focus, my family on this vision, and look, here we are getting ready to get an apology. So I just say that to say that we have been here before. And our ancestors, those like Callie House and Queen Mother Moore, and all of those before us, could you imagine the weight that they were under? And like you said, those things didn't happen, but any one little seed that we're putting out there, it will spark someone else to continue. So it is our turn to continue. It is, what are we going to do under the weight that we're under? This is going to show us who we really made of. You know what I'm saying? So I just like to say that that's how I think, and it's working. And hey, I'm just going to keep it going. That's what I say.
Yeah, and I just want to, before I get into what Get Free is doing, that's amazing work, Robin.
Thank you.
That like when we say this has happened before, it has happened before. Like when you think about the abolitionist movement or you think about the civil rights movement, those movements were happening under conditions that were much worse than what we're under right now. Like very aggressively white supremacist, Black people had no rights, no protection under the law. And those movements were able to build enough power to not just put rights into the law, but actually advance laws that undid some of the structures of white supremacy, right? That kind of guaranteed full rights for all people in the wake of explicitly white supremacist governments and explicitly like authoritarian governments. And so this moment that we're in is one that in our history, we've been able to build movements to not just stop the damage that's going on, but actually reverse it before. So this moment is no different than those moments. And what we can achieve here could actually be a springboard for repair and reparations, as was the moment of the Reconstruction, as was the moment for the Civil Rights Movement. So I'll say that. But also what Get Free has been doing is we know and we anticipated that universities, blue states would be really active terrains of struggle when this administration came into power, and that we would see a lot of efforts to undo programs that advance equality, undo civil rights law, undo, refuse to teach history. I don't know if folks know, but a couple of weeks ago, the Trump administration gave a 2-week ultimatum for every school institution from preschool to university to end programs that like recruited Black people, gave advantage to Black people, undid this historic discrimination. They created an ultimatum that they would pull federal funding unless they basically pulled all these programs that have been in place to like create civil rights and equality in schooling. And so we have been activating young people on campuses to not just push back and activate their campuses to push back against this illegal guidance that's come down from the Trump administration, but to also push their campuses to advance repair and advance reparations. That saying that, keeping things as they are isn't enough. We actually need to do more to undo the legacy of slavery, of discrimination that exists in all of these academic institutions, beyond just protecting our ability to learn about, real American history, to maintain programs that like undo historic harms and make schooling accessible for people who are from the Black community who has been enslaved. The same thing is going forward in places like New York, where we are funneling, Kathy Hochul's energy for resisting the edicts of this administration, this white supremacist Trump administration, into bolstering and backing the New York Reparations Commission. And so there again, we are taking the outrage that people are experiencing from seeing civil rights victories being dismantled and funneling it into reparations as a way of deepening those wins and actually making a more equal society. So right now we're seeing a lot of like activity with young people who want to take action against what they're experiencing, what they're seeing, like they're having their scholarships stripped away, they're having their like educations being whitewashed, and there's an opportunity in how visceral all of those impacts are for young people to mobilize them and organize them into being a base for a movement that can advance reparations. Because whether or not the Trump administration or anyone else is in office right now, we're not going to get reparations unless we have a really strong, loud movement calling for that. And that is what we get to build right now. So that's a bit about what we're doing and how we're using this moment in order to develop and harness young people into repair.
Thank you so much. We have a number of questions in the chat, so I'm going to kind of skip through my preset questions to get to the ones that we have from the audience. But the one that I did want to ask is, how are you navigating tough questions or skepticism that reparations can move forward? I think even we had someone in the Q&A, let me try to get to it, Miranda Alexandria. She said, Happy Reparations Awareness Day, beautiful ladies. What would you say to people who might critique the reparations movement because of the current political climate by saying that we have a bigger issue of the country being led by a domestic enemy and reparations shouldn't be considered a high priority right now? So how would you deal with that type of skepticism?
Yeah, I would just say, sorry to come off hot in this, but this moment that we're having is a result of not doing reparations. Like this administration we have is a like end product of our country's history, our country's failure to reckon with its own history. Throughout American history, we've had, this white supremacist faction who's been trying to control power and levers just for themselves, divide and conquer, exploit people, dehumanize whole sections of the population to exploit them. That's American history. And when we look at the movements that have made America something even semi worth celebrating, it's the movements that took on that faction, that created Reconstruction and won the Civil War. It's the movements that won civil rights, that fought back against this faction. And what's happening is just that same old faction coming to power once again, trying to reinforce, of course, authoritarian rule, but not just that, like segregation, trying to resegregate our society, trying to create hierarchies of race and gender, so only the wealthy white few can benefit. That's what's happening with this administration. So the existence of this political moment is so entrenched with our country's failure to repair, and that's part of why coming out of it, we can advance our need to repair and really ground what's happening here now in our history and point a picture for why reparations are actually the solution for this moment, how they're the prerequisite for an actually healed, equal, multiracial democracy, which we haven't had and has led to this moment. And so it's part of the path for how we heal from this moment and heal our country. So this moment can never happen again. If we had done reparations, we wouldn't be here right now. So it is not to the side. It is very direct and central to what's going on right now.
And I would say also for me and what we're doing here, I think about when I get those type of questions, I just say, what is the alternative? And also non-action is not a thing. Even for me, even if the work that we're doing is to coalesce and to bring us together to work and not be inactive, to me, it's a success. I just don't believe in sitting around complaining about what is happening to us. Even if we utilize this opportunity, I keep going back to this because I think it's important to unify with our allies, with our strategic partners within each of these ecosystems to build power, then we can we can have transformative change. So regardless, okay, don't call it reparations, call it something else, but we need to come together and work to be prepared when we do and prepare those on the grounds for us legislatively, get involved in civic, aldermans, alder people, get engaged in your communities. It's always something to do to help. And all of that, to me, helps to advance not only reparations, but everything that we are doing. Because what reparations is still our basic needs, what we've always needed and we've never gotten. So it is what we're fighting for, and what they're taking away is part of the reparations thing. They're trying to take away our education. They don't want us to be educated. They're trying to erase our history. They don't want that to happen. They're trying to take away our economic power base, all of those things, which is what they have always done. So we have to fight against that. That's what I have to say to that.
We have over 80 people on this line, 3 times that number registered. Someone texted me and said it seems like the chat is disabled. Yes, the chat is disabled, but we want to communicate with you, so please use the Q&A. There are quite a number of questions in there, and Jam's going to get to some of those. We appreciate everyone who saw the importance of this particular thought series, but please use the Q&A.
Thank you. So we have another question. This one is from Marion. What are the best resources for white allies who reside in states defending civil rights? I'm in Massachusetts. Who want to participate in actions for states at risk? I manage election postcarding and texting, but are there other ways to connect in person? She also says, I participate in my local NAACP reparations actions. And how do we connect with BIPOC groups? Thank you.
I can quickly answer. I think Surge is a really good organization for white allies to be part of the fight for reparations and also for racial justice. And they have chapters all over, certainly in
I
Massachusetts.
put Surge in the chat, Nicole, if you can.
Yeah,
Yes, you
yeah.
are.
Oh,
Yeah.
Surge. Yeah.
And there's the Case for Reparations. It's a white ally website. I think, is that the right name, you guys?
No, reparations for the number 4 slavery. Reparations for slavery. And let me put that in because I see Lottie Lee Dubelies in the participant thing, but I know you all can't use the chat, so we'll try to do our best here. Let me see. HTTP.
There's a website. So those are some resources. And I think Reparations Now also might be another white organization.
Yeah, that's Fund for Reparations Now. Let me try to see if I know their. Not quite sure if this is their website. I'm doing my best. You all can put it in the Q&A and we can transfer it to the chat. Okay, she did Fund for Reparations Now. Yeah, but I'm trying to put the actual link. Fund for Reparations Now. Let's try.
So I wanted to, while we do that, share this this comment from Phyllis Utley. Yes, thank you to everyone. We have in Buncombe, I could be pronouncing that wrong, County, North Carolina, Sarah Gudger, who lived to 122 years, half of her life as an enslaved person and half as a free person. When she was told that one day she would be free, she didn't believe it, and yet she saw and experienced it in her lifetime. Reparations is happening now in our lifetime.
Yeah, I really love that. And like, I feel often in organizing spaces, people, they like try to calm everyone down. They're like, change happens really slow. You have to be patient and wait for it. But actually, sometimes change happens fast. And in a moment like this, you see change happening fast in maybe a negative direction, but change can happen just as quickly in an opposite direction. You know, if you look at the way people were talking about slavery in, say, like 1820, they thought this will never not be part of the United States. Maybe we can like phase it out over the course of 100 years. But movements built and created an urgency around ending slavery and slave power. And, 50 years later, you see Reconstruction amendments, just a whole new sort of foundation for the country. And everything was slow until it wasn't. And so we've already come so far in this fight for reparations. And what I will say is like, people losing things like loss aversion, people seeing rights taken away motivates people like almost nothing else. And something in this moment, people seeing rights being taken away, seeing colleges, colleges who admit too many Black people getting sued, that's not going to sit right with people. And so that is really those are the conditions for change for reparations happening really quickly. And it's on us to be able to organize, push further, and help people see why this is common sense for creating an actually equal country.
Let me mention something also. I'm sorry, it's just been weighing on my mind. Because I know Nicole, earlier you were talking about the civil rights movement and et cetera, et cetera. And I just say never ever forget about the Black Power movement, okay? Because it was the Black Power movement that pushed the civil rights movement, that pushed into country seeing the lesser of two evils, so we'll do this as opposed to that. But it's the reparations movement that grew out of the Black Power movement. I don't want to ever minimize that because sometimes you need something that seems much more on the radical front in order to move you more to the center. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
just want to, and as someone who was nurtured
Mhm.
as a teenager by that Black Power movement, I just want to always not let anyone forget about
Yeah.
that.
I absolutely do want to honor that movement. I mean, we're not going to do this on this call, but
I
you know I'm from Atlanta. So my legacy is civil rights. And the thing is, it's also been really whitewashed. If you go to the MLK Center, he was so clear about white supremacy. He was clear about reparations, and that is not part of what is communicated when we
the
talk
narrative
in
out there.
today. So these were all part of the same movements.
Yeah.
You and I have love for each other. Much respect for the Black Power movement. Don't mean to that's my background is just the civil rights movement in particular.
Oh, good.
And my mom was a Black Panther, so I'm all in.
My
I
mom
didn't
is a
know
Black
that.
Panther too.
Okay.
I have both
Oh
sides. I
yeah.
have both sides.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think that goes back to like some of what we were talking about earlier with the people that are skeptical of the reparations movement in this moment, highlighting for folks that reparations are a part of our civil rights. I think that oftentimes it becomes this disentangled. They try to separate the two movements and put them at odds with each other as if we can't have repair in civil rights and as if civil rights can happen without repair.
Right.
So that's another thing. And it also reminds me of a clip that is not shared so often of Martin Luther King one time when he was marching with then Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, and
Mhm.
people wanted MLK to speak out against these wild young people that were taking the streets, and he was like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he actually stood there and marched with Kwame Ture as a youth. So he was encouraging the growth of the Black Power movement from out of the civil rights movement. So I think that's really
That's
important to
right.
highlight. I think here's a good question. Elizabeth Clagic Bourne, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I hear the importance of HR 40. I appreciate how reparations and civil rights are interlinked. How can your lessons of reparative actions be applied to Indigenous reparations and repairing injustices?
I can hop in here. I was just answering another question that was in the chat around non-Black groups supporting reparations. But we've already there's a reparations repair. There's a lot we have learned from Indigenous-led groups, like especially in places like New Zealand, where the Maori people have created like an institute that permanently gives reparations to that population. And there's a lot we can do here in the United States to um, mainstream repair for both of those communities. There have been a number of communities, there have been more communities for Indigenous people in the United States than Black people, absolutely. But for Get Free, for us, our goal is to build support for reparations, um, really for both, because this is a country built on two genocides, right, of Indigenous people and Black people together, and that needs to be healed together. And there is no future of equality without both of those things. And there are groups like Bliss Collective, which is working very hard to weave together the narratives of Black reparations and Indigenous reparations. But these, in my mind, do not need to be pit at each other. There might be some complexities within it, but um, this is there is a mandate for reparations for both of these communities in the United States. And oftentimes what you'll see is people will respond to people demanding reparations for slavery, saying, but what about Indigenous people, right? It's like used as like a cudgel against it. And that really needs to stop because they're both deeply necessary for any kind of future of equality in this country. And actually, there are lots of networks that are creating support between those fights and efforts to understand each other's mutuality. So I don't know if that fully answers that question, but it's a bit of insight around that these are not either or, it's both and they're both necessary.
Okay.
So I know we were talking about generally, but we have folks that are listening in that are coming from different regions and kind of wanting to hear our thoughts on what's happening in their specific region. So if you have any response to any of these questions, please feel free to chime in. So from Robert, could I have a candid answer from someone about this? Our mayor here in DC did not sign off on our reparations bill 25 to 152. The council all signed off on the bill, but she didn't. What do you think we can do to address our leading public figures? One, to hold them accountable. Two, opinion on her perspective and mentality. And I think this goes to one of the questions I was going to ask about talking to legislators. How do you all talk to legislators in this moment?
Let me just say something about DC in general, in specific, and then the panelists can speak in general about talking to legislators. DC is in a unique situation. Yes, our DC City Council, I'm a native Washingtonian in Washington, DC. I did recently unanimously pass a bill that would establish a reparations task force. But because of the colonial nature of DC, i.e., we do not get to move on our own bills without it having to undergo congressional oversight is currently before Congress. And so, with respect to the mayor, it's politics pure and simple. I mean, there's no two ways about that. It's politics to pure and simple. DC is has a colonial status right here. And so we're just waiting to see what's going to happen on the congressional front, and then we're going to move on with our strategy from there. So if someone wants to just talk generally about talking to legislators.
Who can answer that? Because of the nature of my efforts, yes, our mayor is up for re-election soon. She did had executive order for, we have a reparations commission. They've closed and submitted their report. So I just say we have to engage with them. We have to let them know to either we're going to vote for you. If you're not, we have to vote for those who are going to legislate on our behalf, in terms of our interests and things like that. And then you engage them. I think one thing about it too, a lot of these legislators are not educated on what reparations is, just like the communities. And we have to go in and educate them exactly what this is and help them to craft legislation that they can use to put forth and pass these bills and things. We have to educate them. We have to go in and extend our knowledge to them. That's what I found.
Yeah, and I think legislators also need to be pushed. I mean, like, change doesn't come from legislatures, it ends there, right? And so usually they're trying to figure out if something's going to be a political non-starter or go for them. And so it just speaks to the importance of building movement, turning people out, showing that people care about this, because that goes a long way in pressuring beyond just talking to them. But they also need that extra push to like get over the edge. That's part of what we did in New York to tell Governor Hochul that young people were watching to see what she was going to do, if she was going to sign this reparations commission into law or not. And some of those public activities, making it really clear that we were expecting her to sign this, contributed to her eventually signing. We weren't the only people, but that definitely was necessary for pushing her over the edge. So there's that outside stream as well when trying to convince legislators to do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we have a question from George. Do you feel we can have more regional reparations listening sessions from Brother Pancake, Los Angeles Community Action Network? So we have the Reparation Information Thought series that we host, and it's periodic. So if you register to attend this event, you'll get emails from us for the next sessions that are coming up. But do you all, Nicole and Robin, do you all have any organizational listening sessions? And Nkechi also put in the chat for the Reparation Movement monthly meetup that happens every month. So you could RSVP to attend those. But Robin and Nicole, do you
Or,
all have any
yeah.
involvement in any other?
Robin Ruth Simmons, First Repair has strategy sessions, and we do a strategy session for everyone. I think that's the third Thursday of every month, and then they break it down to regional strategy sessions. So if you contact firstrepair.org, and then they can link you with the regional for your region sessions that they have.
And actually, I would say the Northeast Mid-Atlantic region session is today at 5 p.m. Eastern time, just to let you all know.
Yeah, and I think,
Yeah,
something else is today too. I think it's the Midwest.
yeah, that might be so. I'm in Eastern, so I know.
And I also just put in the webinar chat, we're also part of a coalition in New York, which meets and is trying to mainstream public support for the Reparations Commission in New York State. New York Reparations, we meet every month and talk about how we can advance the support for the commission in New York State and strategize there. So I just put the information in the chat.
And I also put in the chat, but I'll be put it because a lot of people have joined since then, that on May 17th is going to be a national reparations rally. And I have information on that. I'm about to re-put it in the chat. This link has all the relevant information in it. Okay, back to you, Jan.
All right, so this question is from Dr. Cheryl Grills. The African Union has designated 2025 as the Year of Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through reparations. How can we leverage and align with international efforts?
So I will say that's very, very pertinent. And I know that there are a number of groups that are part of the reparations movement here in the United States that are actively working on the international front as well, Dr. Grills being one. I also want to mention that the United Nations has also designated the next 10 years as the second decade for people of African descent. One of the things I think is really critical is that we really have these conversations with our brothers and sisters, not just within the diaspora, but on the African continent and at the United Nations, because there seems to be a tendency to discountenance the struggle of Black people in the diaspora who are descendants of enslaved persons, enslaved here, who from being recognized as part of the diaspora. I'm not quite sure how that narrative came about, but that seems to be a narrative that's out there. So we really need to strongly unify ourselves to make sure that we are included in any and all international efforts, so that when the United Nations comes out with proclamations and things along those lines, that it is also based on the experiences that we have had in this country as well. And I've spoken about that in the past. So, yeah.
And there is a convening coming up in March. I'm going to Ghana in the end of March.
It's in April. Oh, you're going yours.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the Ghana one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the Global Circle for Healing and Reparations, that's a international coalition. And so we'll be going and having some of those really pertinent discussions with our brothers and sisters abroad and making those international connections to build and grow.
And just for the record, April 15th to 17th at the UN here in New York will be the fourth session of PFAD, the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent, where people from all over will be coming to New York to further these discussions.
Yeah, I'll be there speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm looking through a few more. We only have about 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna try to get to some that haven't already been answered yet. One of them from Carol she's in California working with CJAC, Just and Equitable California. Basically was talking about the task force that they had, the 1,000-page document, and how they're strategizing for support around bills like creating the Freedmen's Bureau, like the one established after slavery, and they've been doing community meetings in Sacramento and so on, and meeting with all the legislators. So basically, they want to know, is there a way to connect to further the fight? And also, they said Reparations Generations is a predominantly white group also actively working out there.
Yeah, was that a question?
Well, the question part was, is there any way that they can connect to further the fight? I think asking for additional help in California or connecting with folks in California.
So this, you probably are connected with them already, Carol, but I just put in the link a connection to the and Dr. Gould can probably speak to this as well, but the Alliance for Reparations, Reconciliation, and Truth, which is the coalition that's working together to advance and grow support for the recommendations that came out of the commission in California. So that's one good place to connect if you aren't already, but you probably already are.
And also, Nkechi mentioned earlier the reparations monthly meetup, and I think that would be a great place to collaborate with other organizers. We have this will be the last question from the chat, and then I have a closing question. But are there any organizations in the reparations ecosystem focused on securing legitimate claims from governments and businesses? Kind of like some of the organizations set up for Jewish communities.
I don't know exactly what that means, but I do know, I mean, governments, there's like a lot of local reparations fights, and so that is like state governments, but maybe I'm not understanding the question that well.
Nkechi, or did you want me to?
Could you repeat the question, please? Someone had texted me and go on.
So is there like a organization set up or an entity set up to go after businesses and government,
Oh.
a specific entity that would do those types of claims in front of government
Okay,
businesses?
so I don't think she's doing it now, but Deidre Farmer Perlman was doing a lot of advocacy in that area at one point. I'm not sure exactly the strictures of the Reparations Finance Lab, but I know that Reparations Finance, I think it's called Lab, Enos Group. I'm not sure that they're not going after groups, or they're trying to educate people in terms of businesses and corporate stuff and things along those lines. I know that CAM and Reparations United and people in Illinois are doing a whole lot around corporate disclosure acts. But in terms of litigation, if that's what you're asking, I'm not sure what's on the horizon with respect to that at this time. There was a lot of activities along those lines about a decade or more or so ago.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to go to our closing question, which is really kind of an opportunity to uplift and give a closing supportive thought for the movement. And that is, what are the necessary next steps for organizers and supporters to grow and protect the movement during this season? And any other closing thoughts you have?
I just would like to say, basically, we have to build a coalition. We have to support each other. For sustainability, we need to be funded. These local efforts need to be funded. And those who are, we just need to come together and really work together to meet our goals. That's what I have to say. I want everybody to just think about our ancestors and what they had to go through to get us to this point. But for our ancestors, we wouldn't be here. And I thought about Kwame Ture when you spoke about him earlier, when he said he said that uh, the struggle is really at this moment. The struggle is not for the past. The struggle is for our future. This moment in struggle that we're doing right now, it is the struggle for our future. We have to do this work for our children. And so I just want to leave with that.
I love that. Our first principle at Get Free is reparations are for the future. And so that's that exact same framing. It's about how you create a better future. What I would say is this is the fight. I kind of don't understand organizations that are not speaking directly to the large attacks on civil rights that are happening right now. Like, this is the fight. Pick the fight. This is the fight we should be picking because this is the fight about who matters and who has value and who deserves to be equal. And this is what we should be leaning into, both to advance reparations. But I saw a question that Marcia asked around how we can form a coalition with Working Families Party and other groups and groups that are doing good work. And those are great groups, and I am kind of shocked and confused that they aren't leading with their foot forward around that this is the biggest rollback of civil rights we've seen in like 100 years, and that every single progressive organization is not completely up in arms around that. It actually really bothers me, and I feel like this is the fight that is before us. Maybe we don't recognize it because we didn't think we had to fight it again, but it's here and we should fight it. And reparations is part of the solution for how we get to their side. And so lean in, um, lean into this fight that's happening right now and like be really clear about what's happening because the thing we're against is an effort to resurrect white supremacy. And if you don't want to get involved in that fight and to fight against that, I don't really know what we're doing in the movement. There's no more important fight than the fight against that. So get in gear, basically.
So I just want to say, how we going to make reparations rise, agitate,
Okay.
educate, organize?
Organize.
How we going to make reparations rise, agitate, educate, organize?
Organize.
Keep agitating, keep educating, keep organizing. Together we are unstoppable, and together we will win.
Ashe. Thank you so much
Okay.
to everyone for joining us. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Robin. Always thank you, Nkechi. So this video is going to be sent out to everyone. Feel free to share it with others, and we will be in contact with all of you soon. Thank you so much. Have a great